Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Business Podcast, your source for all things business. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres to keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today I have Cynthia Dial on the line, and she's a journalist, ghostwriter, author, and media specialist. Cynthia, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Adam. It's good to be here.
So I'm excited to get into what you're doing as a ghostwriter, author, media specialist. I mean, a lot of different hats you wear in helping your clients. But before we do that, let's get a little bit further into your background. So how did you get started in this business and in your career?
Well, I have a Bachelor of Journalism, which is kind of unusual today for many writers. They don't, but I do, and I followed that track. I wrote audio visuals for a media house, worked at ad agencies, and I always used my money to travel, whatever I was doing. And so I started working as a travel agent, and then I missed the writing process, so I kind of combined the two and started in the genre of travel writing. And from there I wrote for Time Magazine, Hemispheres, Shape Magazine. I wrote a book on it, and I've since written books. I ghostwrote a book on interior design. So I kind of came in it through the back door a little bit, but I love the written word, and I love being able to communicate. And I find it challenging to take a thought and then try to turn it into something that really makes sense to the readers or your clients or your audience. So that's kind of how I did it.
Oh, I love it. It's a great story, and what I do like about your background is that you have you have a lot of, obviously, the traditional training, like you said, not everybody has nowadays, but also you still manage to stay relevant, and where some, let's just say, when we've kind of made this switch to digital, like some people in the who are classically trained, we'll say, or come from the traditional school, have kind of they didn't necessarily find their place in this whole digital and social media age, but you're still working through all of that. Tell us a little bit more about what you think about this change to digital and still using the written word to communicate.
Right. Well, I'll admit that I thought it kicking and screaming. I really did. But then it became so helpful to me. Adam, I used to do stories on, like around the world places where if I didn't get a fact when I was there, I had to stay awake until midnight and make an expensive long-distance call. That's how I got it. Now, I mean, it's crazy. And now I just, click on my computer, find the facts. I used to have to go to the library, have a librarian do a lot of research for me. And now it's all at the tip of a click, which I love that. It's made my job easier. Of course, in a way it has, in some ways, I think, diluted the quality a bit, because everyone does think they're a writer, and really, I know you've read things too, that just the quality is just not there. And that's what I do want to offer, is the combination of both, where I can offer that quality where it's classically written, so to speak, and that it's grammatically correct. You have complete sentences, the punctuation's correct. And then I like to add punch. That's fun for me, to take someone else's work and punch it up, make short sentences, long sentences. I think Mark Twain said, don't use the right word, use the exact word. And that's what makes that's what makes a reader want to continue reading. So that's kind of helped me along the way also.
I love it. And let's talk a little bit more about your ghostwriting and the ghostwriting process, because I think there's a lot of people out there that would like to either publish books and or more articles and more, especially things around thought leadership and their knowledge. But let's just face it, they know that they're not necessarily the best writers, and they don't want to put that foot forward, so to speak, because that's not their strong suit, which is understandable, but I always tell people, I'm like, use a ghostwriter. Why wouldn't you still build your brand and still put that work out? It's still your knowledge, it's still your words, but the ghostwriter's just helping you to flesh them out, because that's their job. It's like, if you couldn't fix your car, would you like not drive? I mean, some people maybe not, but like, you're not gonna like be like, okay, let me go become a mechanic all of a sudden and stop, your law practice or whatever else you're doing. Or that might have been a bad example, because lawyers are pretty good writers usually, but you know what I mean. You're not gonna just stop your day-to-day work to do it. So let's talk a little bit more about ghostwriting and what that entails.
Well, actually, I think a ghostwriter really does save your time, and you are the expert. That's the thing. I wrote a ghostwriter book for an interior designer, and we started with roundtable discussions, and we just kind of honed in on all the subjects, all the topics that she and her staff were expert at. And I was the one who took that information and divided it up into chapters. And then I would go back and we would get into more depth about that. But basically, they were just kind of talking off the top of their head about their expertise, which they had cultivated over years. I really knew very little about design. I will have to tell you, I learned so much about it in that process. I kind of redecorated my house while I was writing the book. I really did. It was so much fun. It was fun for me, but it made it easier for them, because they had it inside them, but they couldn't quite put it into words, at least not words that would make a reader perk up and go, wow, I never thought of that. So that's kind of what and the process can be as easy as, it's whatever the writer prefers, to be honest. And I don't mean the ghostwriter, I mean the author of the book, which is what will appear on the cover, of course. It's whatever they prefer. If they want to hand over reams and reams of letters, so to speak, and documents, I can go through those, and then I can come up with the questions that I know a reader would want to ask, or a reader would want. Or I can do it as simple as just having roundtables and letting them just talk, and I would throw a subject out, and they would tackle that subject, and we would do it that way. Or it can even be business people who want to do a monthly newsletter, and they can just give me the topics of what they want, and maybe just the key points that they want to touch, and I can come up with something, and then they add it up from the perspective of the information, and we can go from there. It can be brochures, it can be even a keynote speech, it can be anything.
That's awesome. And let's talk a little bit more about editing and editing services, because the other side of the spectrum is okay. So there's the people that are like, okay, my writing is not that great. I need a ghostwriter, or I should get one. And then there's the other ones that are like, okay, I can write, I like to write, but let's just face it, I'm not an editor. And we all need editors. Is the bottom line. A writer can't edit their own work. You need somebody else to edit, even if you are a professional writer.
Right, that's true. No, you can't. And I don't think you can see the flaws in your work. You don't see sometimes the redundancy.
No, you can't. 100%.
Don't see the holes. You don't see the holes. I mean, because you know the topic so well, you don't realize what's being left out because you just know it. It's kind of bred in you. And yet, for someone who does not know the subject, that may be a key element, but I can pick it out because I probably don't know that subject either. And that's advantageous for your editor not to know the subject. And then they can read it like any other reader would read it. I always read things out loud, always, because if out loud, if you can't say it clearly, then it doesn't make sense when you're reading it either. I also, and for pace too, that's how I like to punch things up, because a real short, quick sentence would just really get your attention, whereas a long, lengthy one may get all the information in, and you do need those definitely, but you need to break it up. You need a variety. It's almost like seasoning a recipe. You've got to do that. And then there are some, I was just helping edit a book that went to print, and the one thing that I noticed, she had a very, and it was a fiction book, but she had a very extensive medical background. So a lot of it got really where my eyes were starting to cross. And I said, I just don't think, to you this is so interesting, but you need to cut it because you're going to lose readers in this chapter. And then I also advised short chapters because I don't know about you, but when I'm reading a book, I'm kind of goal-oriented. And I like to think, okay, I finished that chapter. I'll get to, I'll look through the chapter and see how many more pages I have, and I'll get to the end of that. But if it's real lengthy chapters, I think you're depriving readers of maybe even getting through all your chapters, if that makes sense.
I like it. No, that makes total sense, and you're dropping words of wisdom today, Cynthia. I know.
Oh,
so
good.
that's awesome. No, definitely, and definitely a lot to benefit from there in your many years of experience. So that being said, Cynthia, if somebody's listening to this and they want more information, either on your ghostwriting or writing services, or editing or anything else that you're working on, what's the best way for someone to follow up with you?
They could email me. That would be the very best way, and it's Cynthia Dial, 1, @yahoo.com.
Fantastic. Well, hey, Cynthia, really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing more about your background and all the great work you're doing for your clients to get their words out and to have them nice and shiny and polished up like only you can do. So thank you for that. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave me a review on the Apple iTunes Store, do all those great things we do to support our podcasters. Oh, and if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, Mission Matters Business, give that a subscribe and leave us some comments on the video. Love to continue the conversation there. No need to let it end here. And Cyn, thanks again for coming on the show.